obviously a Thursday like no other in Nigeria, because Nigerians are still trying to wrap their heads and minds around the redesigning of the Naira. Predictably, is the core of every business conversation today, and it's our core here on Business Morning on Channels Television. Good morning, I'm Ini John Mekwa. Well, yesterday, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, announced the redesigning of the Naira circulation begins mid-December, and old note circulation must end on the last day of January 2023. Mr. Emefiele certainly stated out some reasons for this decision, so let's listen to him and then we'll talk about it.
Mind of the CBN governor as he calls for this special press conference. Over 20 years after the introduction, the Apex Bank is announcing a redesigning of the nation's currency.
The management of the CBN has sought and obtained the approval of President Muhammadu Buhari to redesign, produce, release, and circulate new series of banknotes at 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira levels. In line with this approval, we have finalized arrangements for the new currency to begin circulation from December 15th, 2022, after its launch by President Muhammadu Buhari. The new and existing currencies shall remain legal tender and circulate together until January 31, 2023, when the existing currencies shall cease to be legal tender.
In response to the expansion in economic activities, the bank introduced the 100 Naira note in December 1999, the 200 Naira note was introduced in November 2000, the 500 Naira note was introduced in April 2001, while the 1,000 Naira note was introduced in October 2005. This time, the bank is taking this step to take control of the currency in circulation.
To be more specific, as at the end of September 2022, available data at the CBN indicate that 2.73 trillion Naira out of the 3.23 trillion Naira currency in circulation was outside the vaults of commercial banks across the country and supposedly held by members of the public.
The preceding years have seen lower denominations undergo several redesigning, while an attempt by former governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Lamido Sanusi, to redesign the higher denomination in August 2012 did not yield any result. According to the CBN governor, the initiative will help address some of the nation's security threats, especially kidnapping and terrorism, as he believes that terrorists and kidnappers capitalize on the large excess of money to carry out the nefarious activities.
That's right. That's dominating conversations around the country today. So we'll also delve into that with Kelvin Emmanuel, the Chief Executive Officer of Dairy Hills Limited. Good morning, Kelvin. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Ine. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Did you see this coming?
Well, to be honest with you, I was a bit flummoxed and I was taken off guard when I saw the news of this press conference the central bank did. I mean, what is the most important issue in Nigeria right now? Inflation, ways and means lending. The fact that the flooding has devastated several states and is going to really heighten the inflation level that we have in Nigeria. The fact that the budget of 2023 is non-existent because the government has to borrow $20 billion to be able to plug the deficit. So for the governor of the central bank to come up and announce that he's going to spend tens of billions of Naira at the Printing and Minting Corporation in Abuja to redesign 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira notes, in line with examples of what the Reserve Bank of India did in 2014, and the decision of the Bank of England to call back 20 pounds and 50 pound notes, totaling about 17 billion pounds in 2022. It's surprising. If this is his response to the inflation situation we have in Nigeria, it is really surprising.
good you mentioned inflation, because the central bank governor also talked about inflation, that, I mean, if they were dealing with inflation by mopping off currency in circulation. He did mention that more than 2 trillion naira, in fact, almost 3 trillion naira is outside the bank vault. So that is money that cannot be captured. So with this now, and mopping up, if we can mop up almost 3 trillion naira, don't you think that will taper inflation one way or the other?
The question I have for Governor Emefiele is this. So he's talking about 3 trillion naira being outside the banking system and how that is contributing to inflation. But has he realized that between the last 3 to 4 years, the number of notes in circulation doubled? Why? And if he realizes this fact, which I'm sure he knows, is he accepting that the quantitative easing of printing of money out of thin air in violation of Sections 38 of the CBN Act on Ways and Means Lending contributed to the fact that the currency notes in circulation doubled? So if he mops up cash and have the deposit money bank send the money back to the central bank and he reissue them new notes, is he saying that he's going to restrict the currency notes that are gotten back, the new notes that are reissued of the depositors, from having it? Is he going to place a cap and say, oh, you cannot withdraw more than 50,000 naira from the banks? Is he going to do that? If he's saying that he wants to fight terrorist financing and he wants to fight excessive use of cash during campaign in violation of Sections 87, 89, 90, 91, and 93 of the Electoral Act of 2022, that is plausible. But the timing of the decision, especially considering that the issues we have on ground are bigger issues that takes precedence over the redesigning notes, is very suspect.
Yeah, so I like that you've mentioned the issue of politics, because we know that, I mean, if you go through the dailies today, you would see a lot of reasons connected to it. And one of them, obviously, is that issue that it might help to reduce money politics as we head to the polls in February. What level of priority do you see this, when we look at the scale of things? You've noted some of them, the level of inflation and some of those global headwinds that we face in the country at this time. At what level of importance would you place that, dealing with money politics in the country?
I don't think it's the position of the central bank governor to fight campaign financing in Nigeria. Sections 87, 89, 90, 91, I think 92.3, and then 93, list specifically. In fact, there is a bill before the National Assembly that is calling for the setup of PPEOC, as Political Parties Electoral Offences Commission, which EFCC is fighting, by the way. And the reason why EFCC is fighting that bill is very obvious, that it's going to take the mandate of fighting people who violate the Electoral Act, especially when it comes to campaign financing, from them, right? If you set up an independent commission, PPPEOC, which was recommended by Senator Kenny Inamani and the current chairman of PDP, Iyorchia Ayu, that were co-chairs of the Political Action Committee at the National Conference in 2014, they will handle the issue of violation of campaign financing. It's not the position of the governor of the central bank to fight the violation of campaign financing in Nigeria. That's why I said earlier that his decision, and considering the timing, is very suspect.
So when would you say it's right? I mean, I haven't seen anyone who has said the timing is right, because when we look at what we have inflation, we have our debt servicing increasing, we have our budget deficit hitting 11 trillion naira, we have fuel subsidy increasing, and then next year we also have census. Let's not forget that. We have census next year, that is also funding that should come from the government. And then we now have this printing of this new notes. And before you can print the notes to circulate the country, the logistics and the cost of it, I think we should only imagine it. So obviously, there are some factors, but when can we say it is okay for the central bank to redesign notes? What needs should lead to it? We know in the UK, they lost the Queen, and so they have to redesign their notes. But even with them, I think they say have to end of next year before they can stop using the old notes. So, but when, like in Nigeria, can we say it's the right time, you know, to get to redesign?
Redesigning currency notes is not even in the agenda of the top 5 to 10 issues in our economy right now. Sections 2 of the CBN Act says that it's a position of the central bank to advise the federal government on its finances. I'll give you some issues that the governor of the central bank should bother himself about in case his chief of staff is not bringing important issues to his table. Let me give you some issues. Number 1, if the government succeeds in converting the 22 trillion naira of ways and means lending overdraft into a 40-year government bond at 9%, you realize that the inverted yield, the yield curve, the bond yield curve in Nigeria is coming into an inverted yield curve territory, whereby short-term bonds, the coupons on short-term bonds is actually higher than the coupons on long-term bonds. What that happens typically, what that signals typically is that you have a flight from the stock market, which we're already seeing. There's already a flight from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the NGX. Yeah, and what that will lead to is that you have a negative return on yield. Okay, let's come back to the issue of inflation. Food inflation at 23.34%, core inflation at 20.77%. The fact that if you use the rule of 72 as it stands right now, it takes 3 years and 4 months for inflation rate in Nigeria to double and for the currency to lose 100% of its value. The fact that the governor is not advising the government on the need to adopt a floating exchange rate mechanism that will align the curve and see that the 4 areas through which Nigeria generates FX to be able to stabilize its currency, which are foreign direct investment, diaspora remittances, which are oil receipts, and a 4th one are actually put in the front burner. The only 2 areas Nigeria currently gets FX out of the 4 areas right now are diaspora remittances and oil receipts. And you can see that the under recovery has typically wiped off 100% of the revenues NMPC gets and pays to the central bank in it. And when you consider the fact that Nigeria says it consumes 66 million liters of PMS as against Pakistan that has a population of about 35 million people more than Nigeria consuming 21.5 million liters of PMS, that is also suspect. These are the issues MFLA is supposed to advise the president on. 2 important areas for source of FX that can stabilize the exchange rate. 2 important areas. Number 1, NXP proceeds. He launched Aruti 200 earlier this year, and it has been a failure. And the reason why Aruti 200 failed is because why will you offer 65 naira incentive for companies to bring in back their FX when the difference between the official and parallel market today as it stands is currently at about 320 to 340 naira? And companies can basically make more money by diverting their FX to foreign accounts and offshore accounts, or using some sophisticated way of using the black market to convert their money at a black market rate instead of being forced to convert it at the official market rate. So if he's not addressing these issues, then I don't think he's paying attention to the problems that Nigeria has. Redesigning currency notes, 200, 500, and 1,000, has no bearing. It's not going to impact inflation. It has no bearing. The duty of fighting terror financing is the work of the DSS and the NSA. It's the work of the security agencies, not the work of the governor of central bank. The duty of fighting campaign financing is the work of EFCC, and then when the National Assembly decides to pass that bill on PPEOC, Presidential Parties Electoral Offences Commission, in line with the Electoral Act of 22, is going to be the work of the PPEOC. It's not the work of the governor of central bank. That's why I said his motives are suspect, and we should not believe it.
I mean, the governor said yesterday that he has the approval. Obviously, he has the approval of the president. That's why he could come and make that announcement. So most likely, this is going to go through from mid-December. We're going to see the new notes, the redesigned notes, and then by end of January, we're going to have stopped using the old notes. How do we expect this to impact the economy? Talking about investor sentiment, for instance, the issue of certainty. We've talked a lot about policy somersault in Nigeria. You know, how does this affect the investment climate, business climate, manufacturers' value of Naira?
Well, to be honest with you, you also have to look at the adoption of banking in Nigeria. How many, amongst Nigeria's population of about 209 million people, growing at 30% per year with a fertility rate of 5.4 babies per woman, how many people of the 209 million people are in official banking system? This is a question that MFLA has to ask himself. With the proliferation of agency banking in Nigeria, can we say that people are comfortable dealing with cash, especially in the rural areas and hinterlands, than they are going to the bank and doing banking operations? How many people have access to internet banking? Yeah, how many people in Nigeria have access to mobile phones and can buy internet data to be able to use mobile money and internet banking? These are questions that the governor of the central bank has to ask himself, which makes you wonder why this should be the priority at such a time like this, when we have bigger fishes to fry. I don't see any impact on manufacturing. I don't see any impact on manufacturing, because if the issue of ways and means lending is not addressed, and if the issue of the fact that conversion of that loan is going to lead to a devaluation by both Fitch and Standard & Poor's, that with Moody's that has already done that. In fact, a report came out yesterday that following the downgrade of Nigeria's local issuer rating from BA3 to B1, and foreign currency issuer rating from B2 to B3, which is heading to a lower investment grade, 9 banks has also been downgraded, including the Bank of Industry, right? So if the credit sovereign rating is downgraded and the coupons on bonds go up, the short-term coupons become higher than long-term coupons, and the yield curve begins to invert, and the yield comes down, this thing comes down. How do you expect that the debt servicing that the government pays to the creditors is not going to affect the economy? The Minister of Finance is complaining about the fact that subsidy and debt servicing is affecting them. How can you put 4 trillion naira in subsidy, PMS subsidy, and then put another heading to 3 trillion naira in debt servicing in the same budget of about 20 trillion naira that has an 11 trillion naira deficit and 2 trillion naira revenue? The metrics doesn't make sense. Debt servicing to government revenue is currently at 108%, which means that 100% of your capital expenditure is off, is wiped off. The next president has to borrow money to implement any capital investment project he wants to do. Where are you going to borrow the money from? At what rates are you going to borrow the money from? These are the questions that the governor of the central bank has to concern himself about. If you're not getting dollar from oil receipts, and if the dollar from diaspora remittances is not enough to be able to supply the markets at the primary wholesale Dutch auction system, why don't you focus on the other 2 areas, NXP proceeds and foreign direct investments? And when the vice president went to Washington on his trip a couple of months ago, I remember he had a meeting with the World Bank president, David Malpass. And the World Bank president advised the VP on 2 major issues. Number 1, Mr. Vice President, remove the subsidy on petrol. Number 2, align the exchange rates, float the exchange rates. The premise on which we've always had a fixed exchange rate system of plus or minus 30 naira, on which the central bank will intervene, is always been on the fact that 10 years ago, the band was between plus or minus 30 naira. If you had naira at the buy at 153, you had the sell at 157. It doesn't go above that range. When Buhari took over at 199, it went haywire. Today, we have a difference from 30 naira to about 330 or 340 naira. How can the CBN keep maintaining this fixed exchange rate mechanism when the basis on which they've pinned that mechanism has completely gone off the hooks?
Yeah, Mr.
Foreign direct investors will not come. Yeah. Companies that export will not bring in their remittances because it doesn't pay them. These are the things that the governor has to focus on, not distracting the people by redesigning notes and spending tens of billions of naira that Nigeria doesn't have currently.
All right, Kevin, this is obviously an ongoing conversation. And I guess the central bank themselves will have a lot of convincing to do, to get Nigerians on board on why this should be priority at this time, when, as you've noted, everyone's hand is already filled with just surviving and living day to day. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Kevin Emmanuel is the Chief Executive Officer of Dairy Hills Limited. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. How will this affect the prices of commodity? You want to find out. I want to find out. We'll take that conversation after this short break. Back to watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. Oil prices dropped on Thursday, reversing a more than 3% rally in the previous session. As lingering fears over slack demand in China outweighed optimism from record U.S. crude export and weaker U.S. dollar. Brent crude futures fell 25 cents to $95.44 a barrel, giving up an early gain. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude slid 25 cents to $87.66 a barrel. Well, to help us understand more about this and, of course, that burning issue about the redesigning of the Naira, we have Bolanle Agbaje joining us in the studio. Hi, Bolanle. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean, before we get to oil, I mean, the buzzword now is the Naira and the redesigning and all of that. Should we be afraid? Is it going to affect prices of commodities?
Theoretically speaking, this kind of move doesn't necessarily have an impact on the economy generally. And obviously everybody calls question, why is this happening now? And I think also it follows the rationale for, the CBN doing this, the fact that, changing the currency within the economy should have no, significant impact on the activities of the economy. And that's just because when you talk about inflation or commodity prices, what directly affects, prices would be cost push and demand pull, factors. And on the cost side, you have, increase in cost of supplies and all of that. And on the demand side, one aspect that would involve the central bank would be increase in money supply. That's M1, and we're not seeing any significant. We're not even seeing any increase in M1. They're just replacing the current notes and the current money in circulation. So this shouldn't have any impact on commodity prices and inflation. But looking on the other side, because there's already panic within the economy, for example, you could have market sellers being they could result in or be discouraged from collecting, those old notes, especially during the Christmas season. That's when, this change is happening. So that can affect the demand for some of the products. But if it's a good thing if that happens, because what it would mean is that inflation would actually drop.
Do you think this is a strategy by the CBN to push the e-Naira and the e-transactions?
It could be.
On the other hand,
it could be, but I think one blatant impact of this would be, to bring more money into the banking system, so that whatever policies that they implement would have, significant impact on the economy, as it is not happening at the moment. I think that's the major reason why they're doing this. And obviously, in the past, when this was done in the 80s, it was more or less to reduce the amount of looted funds, that was existing in the economy. So all of that would be stuck in the old Naira. And it could possibly be another reason why that is happening, but they haven't mentioned.
For politicians, maybe. All those money that have been stashed away for political activities may just become useless.
Yes, exactly. So in any case, it's actually a good thing. I understand that, a lot of Nigerians have lost confidence in the policies within the country. And, it's just, there wouldn't be any right time to do this, I don't think. And especially in the short term. So, there could be benefits coming from this change, especially from the corruption aspect. I'm sure they haven't mentioned that, but it could possibly, benefit us in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you said, Nigerians are just weighed down with a lot of burning issues.
Yes.
That, I mean, when you
directly
talk about redesigning, they're like, where is that coming from? Where is that,
Yeah.
But let's look at the price of oil. What's pushing it? This morning, it dropped by 3%.
Same issues in China, the fall in demand in China as one of the...
But they've reopened, I mean, and I think I saw where they're talking about even tapering down on their COVID policy and maybe not being as strict as...
Yes, so there's that, but then there's also the fact that I'm sure China is also looking for a way to reduce its dependence on countries, out of China. I'm sure the president had already released a statement mentioning the fact that in the next 10 to 20 years, they expect to be the largest country in the world in terms of the economic measure. But I don't think although the fundamentals of oil prices still remain strong, oil price currently trading at $95 per barrel is still good for us because, the supply aspects are still, it's still very low in the system. So I don't think this fall in demand will necessarily bring down prices drastically. And also, the U.S. is also thinking of reopening, some of those refineries that were shut. And some of these measures, they are actually long-term measures. Obviously, they can't build a new refinery. I don't think that would ever be in there.
I think investors are even running away from that.
Of course, because obviously in the nearest future, we do hope that there's less reliance on oil. But, Biden is, trying to make sure that he increases supply by any means.
Yeah, and talking about China, I wonder if because they're getting more reliant on Russia, on the cheap oil. I wonder if they're also thinking along that line.
Yes, they do expect that in the next coming weeks, the price for Russian oil would be around $64 to $63 per barrel.
I think the last time I looked into it, they were giving $30 discount.
Yeah.
So when oil is about 95. They're buying it for about 60,
yes,
65.
Yes, and obviously, who doesn't want cheap oil for the economy to boost, funding in the economy? And it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch in terms of the demand for Russian oil, especially when this price cap is imposed for them. And it will also be interesting to see how Russia retaliates in terms of where their oil goes to. And I know they do expect that developing countries, like countries in Africa, do support and they're in with this price cap. But at the same time, African countries are struggling at the moment, and that cheap oil looks like something that would actually benefit them and benefit the economy.
All right. So, what else is happening in that space there?
Good news. Our wheat imports dropped by 3%. This wasn't intentional. Yes. Obviously, it wasn't intentional. It was just because there was less supply from Russia and Ukraine, especially from the Black Sea ports. And obviously, this was favorable for us in terms of the fact that wheat prices are currently trading at about $845 per bushel, which is huge. And it's great for us in terms of our reserves, our import bill and our trade balances it would be positive for those. And, the government had talked about the fact that, this cassava flour policy and all of that. But a lot of, bread producers...
we have the millet bread too.
Yes, but they do mention the fact that when you mix, cassava flour with some of the wheat flour, the combination is not necessarily good for the dough that they need to produce bread. So I'm sure they're still going to be heavily reliant on, some of this imported wheat.
All right, Bolanle Agbaje, thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll certainly watch that space and see what else happens there.
Thank you.
All right, let's switch gears now, and we're going to the NESG. We know that summit was supposed to have been held this week, I believe so. What was postponed and is now going to be held next month, November 14th and 15th, and that will be the 28th Nigerian Economic Summit. It will hold on the 14th and 15th. But just before we delve into that conversation, let's take a breather. We'll be back. welcome back. The 28th Nigerian Economic Summit holds on the 14th and 15th of November 2022. Now, what discussions can we expect? Are they going to discuss the redesign Naira? I wonder. Well, we have joining us to tell us Mr. Chineye Mbaozoku. He's the chair, Central Organizing Committee of the 28th Nigerian Economic Summit. He joins us virtually. Good morning, Mr. Zoku. Thank you so much for your time. And we're looking forward to your summit. Are you going to be discussing the redesigned Naira?
Well, I almost, just listening to the preceding speaker, it almost felt like summit had already started. So I'm certain that we're going to discuss all these things at that summit. So it was really interesting, and I think the discussions are exactly what we're going to have to deal with at the summit. So thank you for starting off.
Yeah, you can say that again. And I know you cannot help but speak about the incoming administration, the elections, and what lies ahead. And so let's be more specific. What areas will the summit be focusing on?
So listen, the summit is themed on 2023 and beyond, priorities for shared prosperity. And when the board of the NESG sat and mandated the Central Organizing Committee, they had in mind the understanding that this was actually a transition year. And by transition year, we mean a year in which the political administration actually changes. But you add to that the impact of the preceding years, the COVID, the double dip recession, and there was this strong sense of the country emerging from a crisis, and where is it going to go to? Where does it go to really from there? And what needs to be done? And at the same time, you have this change at the political level. And so the idea was, well, what happens in 2023 is going to be important, but what happens beyond 2023 is even more important. And very critically, the thinking has to be, how do we ensure that as we're moving into this new world, as we're passing through this portal post-COVID, as we try to emerge from the recession, what kind of world are we going to build? And it has to be a world in which everyone is included. And as we drive towards prosperity, we carry everyone along. So this is the overriding idea behind the theme and what we hope to do at Summit this year. Of course, we've broken that down into certain pillars, certain pillars or sub-themes, if you wish, that have to do with, one has to do with what you've discussed already this morning, which is macroeconomic stability. I think it's known to everyone now in Nigeria, regardless of what level you're at, that macroeconomic stability is critical to all forms of prosperity. And so this one pillar, one sub-theme is going to take up quite a bit of our time. But in addition to that, we're going to be asking ourselves the questions, if we have had plans in the past and they're good plans, what has been preventing excellent execution? Why do we find ourselves almost stumbling from one crisis to another? Why don't we appear to be prepared for the things that are coming at us as other nations have? COVID has come and gone. Yes, people have recovered from it. And then why is that not happening to us in Nigeria? And so we look at a sub-theme that's called Unlocking the Binding Constraints to Execution. And in that particular space, our concern is going to be examining the issues that are critical to deal with. Even when we have the best plans, even when we have the best people, we on execution. So what do we do about that? And then we're going to call the state that to the simple thing.
All right, Mr.
Beyond that, we have.
Yeah, I think the network is a bit unstable there, Mr. Mbaozoku. But I mean, I think you've already whet our appetite enough for the upcoming summit, the NESG summit. Wishing you all the best on the 14th and 15th. And I know that a lot of people will be interested, especially when we look at the country beyond 2023. Thank you so much, Chair, Central Organizing Committee of the 28th Nigerian Economic Summit. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
All right, well, let's go to the markets now. Will Ibong is here to give us the breakdown of how the market traded yesterday, Will.
It's all smiles, all smiles.
Are you smiling because you like the redesigned Naira?
Oh,
You didn't see that coming.
I know. No. I don't think it's about the
I think
redesign,
you like the
Naira.
new color. I suspect you.
No, I just like the green of the equities. No, I'm not even looking at the Naira right
You've
now.
had a sneak peep into what the central bank is doing, so you're happy with the new color.
I'm just happy with the equities market.
Okay, all right. Let's stay there.
Let's stay with the equities market. And now, so the equities market sustained the bullish sentiment it had this week. Interesting big names drove the market. The all-share index was up 0.16% yesterday. We're still inching closer to the 45,000 level now, 44,859.78 points. That's really close. And now 24,424.433 trillion naira, not so close to the 25 trillion naira mark. We're not even close to the 26 trillion naira mark either, but we're hoping that we'll see a boost in today's trading session. Probably a 1% jump in equities will probably bring that about. Now, month-to-date returns now negative still, 8.5%, and year-to-date returns is now at 5%. Now, let's look at the market movers who drove the market yesterday. We saw Boas Cement yesterday up 2.64%, raising its share price to 70 naira yesterday, and O&O also got a boost, 2.33%. Now it's 4 naira 44 kobo. Girigu was up yesterday. It added about 6 naira to its share price yesterday. It was closed. It was at 110 naira. Now 6 naira to its share price. 5.45% drove that to 116 naira yesterday. Honeywell flour 1.29%, 2 naira 35 kobo. These big names gave the market a run for its money, and we say when these names sneeze, the market, they got to respond. There's an earthquake that definitely happens. Now we're seeing the volume yesterday was not very encouraging. 93.52 million units traded in yesterday's trading session. But value got a boost, 3.38 billion naira, deals 3,188. But we have Peter Abe, trader at Stanbic IBTC Stockbrokers, to give us more insight as to what's happening, what's driving the sentiment. We know there's bargain hunting, but what's really pushing investors to take advantage of the dip. Good morning, Peter. How are you doing today? So we're waiting for Peter, but let's just quickly see what the NESD market is talking about. The NESD, if you can have the NESD index up there, so that the NESD index traded quite negative yesterday. It was down about 1 point, I think it was down 2.1, it was marginally up 0.01% yesterday. If you can have the NESD index up, please. So it was up, the index was at 722.54%, and market cap is Naira 51.16 billion naira. Still not where we were looking for, 1 trillion naira mark. That's quite like the level the NESD stays at. We saw volume at 114,866 deals, 7.61 million naira, and 7 deals traded yesterday. Still not enough for investors. I don't know how that market is trading. It's quite opaque, but we're hoping that investors will dig into the market and give it the boost that is required. Now we're going to go back to Peter. I think we have Peter now to talk about what's happening in the equities market. Good morning, Peter. How are you doing today?
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Now, Peter, we've seen the investors taking advantage of a dip. We've seen a boost. The market has traded 3 straight days in the green, and we've also seen Q3 earnings trickling in, coming in as, and they've been impressive ones. 1 for 1 yesterday. We saw Airtel Africa, we saw Seplat, and other big names. What can you tell us about what's really driving the market? Are these investors really, are the earnings propelling the green positive close that we've seen, and is it going to be sustained?
Well, partially, yes. The numbers, the Q3 numbers, are part of the catalyst we are seeing in the market. I mean, for all interests we are seeing, everybody agrees the fundamentals look good on the surface of it, and also looking at the numbers, they are actually trading cheap. The stocks are trading cheap. So whoever is buying now is actually buying a good name. I mean, more concern is just on the macro side at the moment.
Well, we're looking at Airtel. Airtel Africa, they recorded double-digit revenue, but their pre-tax was lower. And also, we saw that Airtel Africa, listed on the London Stock Exchange, kind of dropped it despite this earnings report. What can you tell us about that, Airtel Africa?
From the numbers released to market, the revenue grew. I mean, looking at the data revenue, that's helped on that side. However, the net income dropped by 1.5%. What we've seen is that the finance costs rose during the period, over 112% increase in finance costs, and that's dragged the net income into negative region. So if you compare where it's trading on the London link at the moment, is down, is quite flat in Lagos at the moment. But I mean, if as people read more into it, we believe that they will see beyond the finance costs that the top lines are good, and that could help in some extent to drive interest in the name.
Peter, thank you so much for that. Just a quick one. What do you think the market is going to close, bullish or bearish today and the rest of the week?
Well, we still expect it to be bullish, though not just mild interest coming in all the names that we are seeing at the moment.
Thank you so much, Peter Abig, equity trader, Stanbic IBTC, stockbrokers, for sharing your thoughts with us. So, fixed income segment, we saw across all maturities, the NTB auction yesterday, increases. There was increase in all the stop rates yesterday, so looking good
I'm sure you're looking forward to tomorrow when you have a conversation on that.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
We'll be looking forward to that. We will. Thank you so much. Let's take a breather now. After that, we have Juliana standing by. Shell is making a lot of money in the UK. Well, Juliana certainly has the details, but that'll be after the break here on Business Morning on Channels Television. Welcome back. Still watching Business Morning here on Channels Television. We'll head straight to our London studio where Juliana is standing by. Hi, Juliana. Good morning. I mean, that Shell profit is really attracting, you know what I'm saying? Getting $9.5 billion. But before we get to that, fracking ban is back. And this is Rishi Sunak living up to expectation, promises made years back.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's pretty unfortunate, Innie, for Liz Truss, because, of course, her 45 days as a resident of number 10 Downing Street, that legacy is slowly evaporating. This was one of her policies that she tried to put in place because, of course, we've got high energy prices. And she was trying to look for ways that the UK could be less dependent on the continent. It actually ended up being the ultimate downfall for her, because this time last week was the morning after the night before, where there were, you know, fisticuffs in the lobby on the vote for fracking. Now, yesterday, during Prime Minister's questions, Rishi Sunak did confirm to Caroline Lucas, who is the only sitting member in Parliament of the Green Party, that indeed the ban imposed by the Conservatives in the 2019 manifesto would stay. His spokesperson also confirmed it immediately after. But it has caused some issues for gas companies in the United Kingdom that did have a license to look for shale gas. Their share prices has dropped significantly, particularly iGas. I just very quickly want to read this statement that I just got from their interim executive chairman, Chris Hopkinson. He said, "This is a slap in the face for millions of people dealing with the energy and cost of living crisis in Britain. The development of Shell in the UK could have provided jobs, tax revenue, energy security and significant community benefits in the middle of an energy crisis." Environmentalists have called this a common sense decision, and they've praised the Prime Minister.
Yeah, Juliana, there will always be two sides to the conversation, I guess. You know, environmentalists, of course, are happy about this, but, I mean, those dealing with the energy crisis are not. But very shortly, Juliana, because Ladi is looking at me from the corner of his eye somewhere around here. Shell, they've made $9.5 billion, and there's no windfall tax, is there?
There isn't. This is the second highest quarterly profit for Shell in its history, $9.5 billion, £8.2 billion. They haven't paid any third quarter windfall tax that was imposed in May, 25% of profits, because they have invested heavily in the North Sea oil fields. It's shocking nevertheless, but great for Shell and great for their shareholders.
Yes, Juliana, thank you so much. So we'll talk to you at 1:30 during Business Incorporated. And then Ladi releases me and walks in with his number, crypto. No, I don't know. I don't think your profit is as good as Shell. $9.5 billion.
But we have a little milestone.
Oh, a little. Okay.
Just a little milestone. You see the market cap now back to the 1 trillion level.
Congratulations. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, we were last there, I think, around June. So
yeah, it's been a while.
It's worth celebrating for this market right now. But it's still fair. Better than extreme fear that we've had for a couple of weeks now. 32 points. That's the sentiment in the crypto market at this point. Let's look at the market cap there. We see it there, 1 trillion, up 2.57%. Well, last year, around June this year, have been below this level for a while now. Volume traded down 19.55% this morning. Bitcoin dominance 39.59. We see price of Bitcoin there still holding above the 20K level at $20,726, up 2.45%. We see massive volume still for Bitcoin there at $58.23 billion, showing that traders there's still a lot of buying pressure in this market. 1.5 for Ethereum, hold it at 1.5 level, up 3.99%, $29.92 billion traded in Ethereum. Let's bring in Gilbert Jopata now, financial market analyst. Hello, Gilbert.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. I see you're excited. Yeah, back above 1 trillion. Talking about the crypto market cap. But we're also seeing Bitcoin hash rate, at an all-time high. What does this mean for the market?
Okay, if you look at the data from Glassnode, you will see an impressive hash rate explosion that began in 2017. And that's an upward trend despite the China ban and other challenges that we would have gone through. So, this hash rate, every beginner in the industry know that when a transaction occurs, miners always compete to solve some mathematical problem. And the first that solve that problem always get rewarded. And then a new data is added to the next chain. Once this repeats itself, it's a block of chain. So specifically, what they are competing to produce is a hash. And the hash is the total computational power that is used to mine and process transaction. And this is a very, very important metrics for assessing the strength of a blockchain network. The higher the hash rate, the more difficult it is to attack such blockchain. The lower the hash, the easier it is. And it is quite an impressive performance, realizing that we are talking about a protocol without a CEO, no marketing team, no VC backing it, or no board of directors. The economic incentive here actually works. And this actually tells us the fundamentals of this protocol is completely detached from the price of Bitcoin at the moment.
Quite interesting. And why do you think this is happening at this time?
Okay, there are a couple of things we could look at. First is the Ethereum merge. The transition of Ethereum from the proof of work to proof of stake left miners with no choice but to move to another coin that they could mine, since hardware mining is no longer needed in the Ethereum network. And meanwhile, we have more friendly legal playing ground. After China ban, other countries of the world have made a more friendly playground so that it can attract this new breed of entrepreneurs. You can see even Canada is stopping that, Germany with a whole lot of other countries. The next thing is the reward incentive here is very attractive. When Ethereum mining was still taking place, I had a friend in the US who was telling me by then it has sold for $4,500. He told me it cost him $350 to mine 1 Ether. So you can imagine the profit potential he has. And meanwhile, something else, Bitmain, I heard, has dropped the price of their ant miners, so it's less expensive. If not for epileptic power supply, maybe Nigerians can also take advantage of less price of ant miner as well to also for economic benefit and also increase the hash rate as well.
Right. All right, Gilbert, just look into your crystal ball quickly now. Where do you see the short-term top for this rally we're seeing in the market for Bitcoin?
Oh, like I've always said, I always look into the macro perspective of things. But despite this, in the range band, we also have an upside. That upside is about the 22, 23. Yet we are still going to go back to the support of that range, and then a downside spill potentially can also still occur. But yet we still have a short-term price spill that can move to 22 or 23K BTC.
All right, Gilbert, thank you so much. That's Gilbert Repata, financial market analyst. So, back to the redesign. So maybe it's time you convert your stash into Naira.
You know what, Laddie?
What
I think you should go back home, check right under your
under
bed,
my bed, right.
your mattress,
okay.
and then bring out those stash of cash that you've been keeping.
Sadly, there's nothing there, but yeah.
Oh, okay, let's hope so. Thank you so much, Laddie. All right, well, that's it. I do believe that in the coming days, we're going to hear a lot of conversations about that redesigning of the Naira. This is not the end. And, of course, the CBN will also have to convince a lot of Nigerians and talk to them about the why this should be giving priority at this time. It's Nigeria anyways. It's our Nigeria. Everybody owns Nigeria, so we should be carried along. I guess that's the conversation, but that's it on the program today. And I do hope it's been interesting for you, enlightening, I guess. It was for me. And then 1:30, Will Ibong will be here to give you update from the world of business. I'll see you at 10 p.m. for the stock market report, and then I'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, with another episode of Business Morning. Do have a profitable business day. I'm Ini John Mekwa.